Okay. Okay. I want to thank you all for being here. Today I'm going to talk to you about the importance of planning and budgeting. We just had a presentation about our methodology. The planning and budgeting is a part of that. So I'm going to focus on that specific part. Okay, don't forget to scan the QR code if you have some questions. So, let me introduce to you Synergy Europe. For those who were here at the previous talk already know about it, but Synergy Europe is a Belgian company that sells and installs solar panels in Belgium and in other neighboring countries. Now the context is that there was a booming demand for renewable energy. There were endless opportunities, so everything was actually going great for Synergy. But if we look behind the scenes, the data were scattered across different tools. Projects were tracked in emails, inventory was tracked in inventory, and all their teams were working, all departments were working a bit with their own tools and had their own way of working. So Synergy decided to do something about it, and they chose for Odoo. And what was supposed to be, so Odoo was supposed to support their growth, but here's the twist. Synergy was really eager and enthusiastic to start with Odoo. They also had quite some problems to solve, so they actually started the implementation with no real planning, with no real budgets, and so what was supposed to be a love story between Odoo and Synergy quickly turned into a story of challenges and a story of lessons learned. Because planning and budgeting are the foundation of a successful implementation. What do I mean by planning and budgeting? I think it's important that we start with the same frame of reference. When I talk about planning, I don't only mean putting deadlines and milestones in a calendar. Obviously, that's part of it. But planning also involves defining the scope. What are we going to implement? What are the processes we're going to implement? And why are we going to implement them? It's also about phasing. Okay, planning involves the phasing. We've seen it with Clara. It's important to phase or to break down your project in different phases. Not always, it depends on what you're going to implement, but I'll come back on that later. Planning also involves assigning responsibilities. Okay, as a consultant, I'm responsible for the success of the project, but that doesn't mean that my client doesn't have responsibilities as well. Inside the company, the key users need to know what they need to do and when they need to do it. So you have to plan for that as well. And planning is also about risk anticipation. Okay, I think a lot of people here have done implementations. We all know that there are some risks, there are some unexpected things happening in projects. So the risk anticipation is really important to involve in your planning. So if I would summarize what planning is for me, I think it's making clear for everybody what path they will be walking on before their journey actually starts. Then the budgeting part, obviously when you think about budget, you think about money. So yeah, there's a financial side to it. Okay, what is this going to cost in licenses and in implementation services? But I'm more going to focus on time. Obviously, that time equates to money if you're a company that pays for implementation services. But I'm going to focus on time rather than money. Why? Because that's usually what we mean by budget at Odoo. Okay, we're budgeting how much time is it going to take to, for example, implement phase 1, to implement phase 2, or to do this development. Okay, so it's more about time and resources as well. Freeing up the people who are going to be responsible or who will be part of the implementation. And it's important to understand that planning and budgeting are two sides of the same coin. In general, ideally, I'd say you could start with the planning and then do your budgeting based on the planning. But why do I say they're two sides of the same coin? Imagine you have a plan, but you have no budget. Okay, that's nice. You have a roadmap, but you have nothing to execute it. And if you have a budget, but you don't have a roadmap, then you're actually just wasting resources, right? So they must be aligned in order for you to be able to have a realistic project framework and in order to move on to your implementation. Now let me get back to Synergy. Like I said, their idea was, okay, let's hit the ground running. We have big issues. We want to be live really fast with the whole suite, okay? It's a company that installs solar panels, so basically they had CRM, sales, field service, subscriptions as well for maintenance, accounting. Actually, all the applications that you can imagine, name it, they wanted them, okay? They wanted them fast, and they wanted everything at once. So they actually planned a big bang, what we call a big bang. That means that you go live with all the applications, all the flows at once. They wanted to go fast, so they also said, okay, we're not going to plan the testing periods, we'll plan the tweaks after going live, okay? We'll make adjustments at that time, but now we have to move on. And they also made the assumption that everything would go as planned, that there would be no bumps and issues along the way. So they said, okay, we're going to buy 200 hours of implementation services. That should be enough. Okay, so when you see this or when you hear this, you know that it's actually more of a wish list than a real roadmap with a proper budget. And that's how they started the implementation. Okay, they started the implementation without a proper analysis, no real preparation on the side of the company, and they immediately started with separate workshops between the different teams with a consultant, and they had an idea of, okay, let's advance where we can, let's make progress on this part, and on this part, and on this part. So they made small bits of progress here and there. And then management was also not really involved, the key stakeholders, I mean by that. They didn't monitor the situation and they were on the sideline and just assumed that the project was making progress. Now, if you're a consultant, if you're a partner, even if you're a client, you hear this, these are all big red flags. So, what happened? Okay, first of all, we saw that the workshops were not efficient. Okay, so the teams, the people inside the teams were fighting with each other because they didn't align on how should it work or how does it work now and how should it work. So it turned into fighting sessions. Inconsistent data all across the board. Okay, all the teams were working with their own tools. And that means that the data were sometimes different in one tool than in the other, so they were inconsistent, and it was really tough to get complete data as well. The scope kept getting bigger. That's what I mean by scope creep, because they didn't really prioritize it first. So everything was a priority, and then new corner cases came up. Oh, we have to do that as well. So the scope kept getting bigger. There were some unexpected customizations as well, so unexpected developments, because Odoo couldn't exactly do what Synergy wanted. So they said, okay, we're going to do a small development here, a small development there. The key users who didn't really know what their responsibility was, or that they had to free up time, and when they had to free up time, they were overloaded because they didn't free up time in their agenda. There were absences because people go on vacations, sometimes people are ill. So this all led to an exploding budget. Okay. If we go a bit further down the line, I'm not going to talk about all the phases, but if we go a bit further down the line, Synergy did go live with a few months delay, but the user adoption was at an all-time low because they didn't have proper preparation, because there were still mistakes. And actually the budget had also doubled compared to the initial 200 hours. We were already at 400 hours. So what actually was supposed to support their growth was actually quickly turning into a nightmare. Now, this might sound a bit extreme to you. Okay, but it's not. This is what happens with ERP implementations when you don't address the budget and first the planning and then the budget properly before you start implementing. Because you can have the best tools in the world, you can try to implement Odoo. I think it's a great tool, it's easy to use. You can have the best tool in the world, but if you don't address these things at the start of the implementation, you're definitely going to have issues. Oh, yeah. So, what should Synergy have done? What can we take away from their mistakes? First of all, they should have done, or the consultant should have done, a business analysis with them. What do I mean by a business analysis? At Odoo, that's 1, 2, 3 meetings where we go over, depending on the complexity, where we go over all the processes, all the workflows, who does what in your company, why do they do it that way, so that you get a big view, a macro view of the issues within the company, but that you also have a micro view of how everything works. We do that to identify potential risks, and because once we have done that, then we can start phasing the implementation. Okay, so I'm going to combine also the 2 points, define the scope and phase your implementation. Defining the scope here, well, the company wanted to go live with everything. I think defining the scope here is more like, okay, what is key for you? What do you really need to implement? What are your priorities? Okay, and then based on that, you can start phasing your implementation. Phasing your implementation, that always depends a bit on the size of your project, and how you're going to phase it can depend on the complexity, can depend on the priorities of the client. For example, I'll give an example here at Odoo. Sometimes when we have complex implementations, we know it's a big project, we sometimes try to start with a quick win, okay, to get already some users live. Why? To increase user adoption, and just mentally, if you know it's going to be a big project, it's always good to have that win in your bag. But other times we start with the priorities of the clients. Some clients say, for example, oh, my accounting system is going to expire end of December. If we're at the beginning of December and we have to start a big implementation, probably the first priority then will be implementing the accounting. So it's important through that business analysis to understand what are the priorities and how am I going to phase my project. Then what Synergy also didn't do was assigning responsibilities. If you have key users, it's important for them to know what they have to do, what their responsibility is, and when they have to do it. Because an implementation is not only the responsibility of the client. For example, at Odoo, what I usually always tell the clients I'm working with, the success of this project is a 50-50 responsibility. But if you say that, you also must make clear what the responsibility of the client is, of course. Because if he doesn't know what to test, what to do, when to do it, then you have an issue. Then data preparation, that's always that depends on the project. Data migration from whatever tool to Odoo can be simple, but can also be very tricky. And usually people choose Odoo, or companies choose Odoo to centralize their data, so that data comes from different tools. So it's important, if you don't do it before implementing, to already start thinking about it and already addressing the data, or what are we going to do about data, right? What data do I need in Odoo, and how am I going to extract them from the tools that I currently have? Can I extract them from the tools that I currently have? Is that data consistent with data in other tools? So these are things that you really need to think about, because data migration can, I think all the consultants here know it, can sometimes be a pain in the... So, then also anticipating risks, okay, that's what Synergy didn't do. It's really important, especially when it's a complex implementation, that you create a buffer zone. Because in ERP implementations, even when you do a perfect business analysis, by the way, the perfect business analysis does not exist, but even if you do a good business analysis, there's always things that might come up. So you need to create a buffer zone in order for your planning to be realistic. If you don't create a buffer zone, if you assume that everything is going to go according to plan, there's a high probability that you will have a delay in your implementation. And then who's going to work with Odoo? In the end, it's the end users, and they of course also need some time to adjust. You can, when I say test properly, I could also have written one additional point is change management. It's really important that you put time into onboarding your users on Odoo. Because if you don't do that, the day that they start working with Odoo, they will make mistakes, and it takes way more time to correct mistakes than to address or to train the people at first or before they start working with Odoo. So that's also something that Synergy, they made a big mistake in. Now, when we go to the budgeting part of it, once you have done the planning, you can go to the budgeting part of it. Here I said Synergy bought a pack of 200 hours, but they actually had no idea what they were going to spend it on. So it's also the role of the consultant to be really clear, okay, this is my analysis, this is how we're going to phase it, and this is the budget or the time that we're going to allocate to each separate phase. You can go, depending on the complexity of the project, you can even go further. You can say, I'm not going to budget only the phases, I'm really going to budget individual tasks. Or if you identify a development, for example, during your business analysis, I'm going to budget that development. So it's important to assign the time to the different things that you're going to do. And then afterwards, of course, as a consultant or as a partner, you're going to timesheet on it. It's important for the company and yourself also to monitor the time versus the budget. Why? Because you might have, for example, for a first phase, have budgeted 50 hours, and after 30 hours you see, damn, we're not going to get there because there's too many questions from here and there. So it allows you also to adjust, to readjust, and to have a discussion with your customer like, okay, this is where we're at, we're not going to get into the budget, what do we do? And that's also a key takeaway I want to talk about today, or I want you guys to get from today, is that planning and budgeting aren't one-off exercises. Yes, you have to do them at the beginning of the implementation, but like I said, everything in a project can evolve, there might be changes necessary, so it's important to review them frequently and to adjust them if necessary. If you take a big project with a big scope like Synergy, what they should have done is, for example, create a steering committee with key stakeholders, I don't know, every Monday or every 2 Mondays, but to at least have a view like, okay, where are we in terms of planning? Are we on track? Where are we in terms of budgeting? And where do we have to intervene if necessary? Now, obviously, you can also use Odoo to keep your planning and budget and execution aligned. You're going to see that in the talk this afternoon, exactly how we do that at Odoo, because we use the project application and also the timesheets to keep track, well, first of all, to phase our projects, but also to keep track of the budget that we allocate to these different phases. Now, to conclude for today, if you're planning on working or if you're planning on starting a project implementation anytime soon, ask yourself the right questions. First of all, do I know what I'm going to do and when I'm going to do it and how I'm going to do it? And secondly, do I also know what time and what resources I'm going to spend on each of these tasks? If your answer to 1 or 2 of these questions is no, then you should review it and address it before you start your implementation. If they're yes, then you can start implementing and having fun. Thank you. Okay. Ah.
C'était le bon QR que tu m'as donné.
Ah merde, c'est pas celui-là. Attends,
Ouais, c'est celui du début. Hein.
c'est celui-là, ouais. Ouais, c'était un test que j'ai fait hier. So right now there's a weird situation. There's no questions in the pad. So was I too clear? Do you guys have any questions?
Apparently not.
Okay, then I want to thank you all for coming and enjoy the rest of your day. See you guys.
Thank you.